morning, students. So yesterday we had covered about different agencies that help in solving crime. So we stopped at IB. So I'll brief you about the organization once we finish SPG. Okay. So yesterday we were remaining with SPG. So SPG stands for, SPG means Special Protection Group. Special Protection Group. Okay. SPG stands for Special Protection Group. It's a special operations force whose objective is providing proximate security to the Prime Minister, former Prime Ministers and their immediate family members. So what is the main aim of it? Why was it formed? It was formed to give protection to our Prime Minister, okay, our former Prime Minister and their close family members. So SPG is a agent. You can see, right, when Prime Minister is walking and see so many people in suit and microphone and all walking with glasses and all, those people are all from the SPG, okay. So they give protection to the Prime Minister, former Prime Ministers and also to the immediate family members of the Prime Minister. It was formed in 1988 by the Act of Parliament of India. It was formed in 1988. Okay, SPG was formed in 1988 by an act passed in the Parliament. It maintains overall security arrangements in collaboration with IB and state or union territory police services. So it maintains the security. So for security, SPG cannot go and get the intel from everywhere, right? So we already learned about Intelligence Bureau. We already learned about Intelligence Bureau. So IB will be the agency which will be dealing with intelligence of the, like in the India inside, domestic intelligence. Inside India, whatever intelligence they can gather, that IB will gather. So before the Prime Minister going to some place, okay, then SPG, this protection group will ask IB if there is any threat there, any chance of riot there. So IB will give all the information. If it's safe only, then only the Prime Minister will come. Okay. So they work in collaboration with the Intelligence Bureau and state and union police services. So you can see, right, whenever Prime Minister comes, there will be entire police force of the state will also be there. So they work in collaboration with Intelligence Bureau and the state or union territory polices. These are SPGs. So you can see Prime Minister Modi ji walking and you can see all these people there. All these people are agents, SPG agents, okay. They have their own, like they have bulletproof vests inside. They'll be having a vest inside that will be bulletproof. All those things are tactical glasses and they have their earphones every time connected, okay. They'll be having armory also, they'll be having guns also, they'll be armed. So their main aim is to protect the Prime Minister, former Prime Ministers and their immediate family members. So why was this formed? Like after the assassination of Prime Minister Indira Gandhi in October 1984, a review committee by the secretaries and it's decided to enter security of Prime Minister to a special group. So our Prime Minister Indira Gandhi was assassinated. So at that time we knew that that was a big security flow, okay. So that is when in 1984 they told Indira Gandhi was assassinated, then they thought that for all these Prime Minister we should include more securities, okay. So that is when they thought of a special group only for the security of these Prime Ministers. So that is when SPG was formed. You can see when Donald Trump is coming, they will have so many armored cars and all in front of, right. So you can see how much security they provide. Just like that, in India also SPG provides security. They will be having so many, not just armed police, they will be having this network dampers. So whenever there will be a car that will be going in front, all those things will damp all the network besides. So all the connections that phones are getting, they will damp all the connections. There are so many equipments that SPGs have, okay. So SPG's cover for Rajiv Gandhi was withdrawn once he ceased to be Prime Minister. So first SPG was formed only to secure the perimeters of the Prime Minister, okay. Prime Minister, wherever he goes, they used to go with him, with the Prime Minister. But Rajiv Gandhi was also the Prime Minister. After he left the office, he lost that SPG protection, right, because SPG was first mainly made for only the Prime Minister. So after Rajiv Gandhi left, okay, he left the Prime Minister's seat. That means SPG's protection also was left. So Rajiv Gandhi was assassinated in May 1991, okay. Rajiv Gandhi was assassinated in 1991 and because of that, because Rajiv Gandhi was a former Prime Minister, okay, he left the Prime Minister position, then after he was assassinated in 1991. So one amendment was made in the SPG's Act. So amendment means like we can make new chapters, additions to the Act, okay. So a new chapter was made, like SPG has to protect the former Prime Ministers also for at least 10 years. So for a period of 10 years they will protect the former president also, right? Former prime minister also. For example, if now the prime minister is Modi ji, okay, so before that Manmohan Singh was there, so the SPG should protect Manmohan Singh for 10 years, okay. That is because the event was Rajiv Gandhi was assassinated after he leaving the prime minister's seat, he was assassinated afterwards, so he did not have any SPG cover, and because of that incident there was an amendment made in the SPG that tells that SPG should cover the former prime ministers also for about a term of 10 years, okay. On November 27 November 2019, yeah, in 27 November 2019 the act was amended again. First they told they have to protect the former prime minister for 10 years at least, okay, 10 years they have to protect. So this amendment was made in 2019, okay. They told that SPG will give protection to the former prime minister only for 5 years from now, okay. They now from now like only 5 years. So the after, if for example after this term, if Modi ji is not becoming the prime minister, okay, so the SPG will provide him 5 more years of security, okay. So that was mainly to bring down the cost, because for 10 years you have to maintain this SPG or maintain this armed police with the former prime minister, that was too much cost, okay. So to cut down the cost only they did this. So SPG will now provide only protection to the former prime ministers for just 5 years, okay. They are mainly for the protection of prime ministers, their immediate family members, and former prime ministers only for 5 years after they leave the office. So that is all about SPG. So I have added the links or references of every agency that I have talked about. So I will just brief it once more, then we will come to the links. So the first agency we talked about was police. Okay, and before the independence, police was under British and they were known as Imperial Police, Indian Imperial Police, okay. And after 1948, after we got the independence, they changed its name to Indian Police Service or IPS, okay. Indian Police is an all India service. All India service means just like your IAS, IFS, IPS is also an all India service. That means all India service means you can employees can be officers can be employed by both union and state governments, okay. The central government also and the state government also has the power to appoint these officers. Take an example, for example, your collector may be of some other state, okay. So if you are an IPS, that's an all India service. That means center will, if I am from example, I am from Kerala, I did IPS, I may be posted somewhere in Myanmar, so I may be posted somewhere in Shimla, for example, okay. So that means IPS is an all India service, not for a particular place, okay. Center can post you anywhere or the state also can post you anywhere. Then yeah, the first first stone for this introduction was the Police Act, okay. Police Act in 1861. Yes, Imperial first it was known as Superior Police Services, then they changed it to Indian Imperial Police. Indian Imperial Police, the highest rank was IG. Indians could not rise to the highest rank, okay, because Indians would revolt if they had the highest rank. So that was the problem. And but in 1902 they told that you can write exams for this post, and if you are scoring higher points, if you are Indian also, British also, you can get to the higher post. That only happened after 1920, okay, 1920. Just moving fast now. Yes, so after independence we started IPS, that was under Article 312 of the Constitution of India. Yes, IPS. Then we had CID, Crime Investigation Department, that was based on the Criminal Investigation Department of British Police Forces. So they wanted to create a Crime Investigation Department in India also, so we created one in India, Crime Investigation Department. So the first CID was created by the British government in 1902, okay. CID also has many branches. It depends on the state government, okay. What all the state governments, what all different branches the state government wants for the CID. So for example, if you are taking any state, they may have different branches. They may sometimes only have a CID branch, sometimes they may be having a CBCID or crime branch, okay. Crime branch or anti-human trafficking or narcotics cell, fingerprint bureau, CID or anti-terrorism squad. It depends on the state, what all the state wants. Then we went to CBI, okay, CBI, Central Bureau of Investigation, okay. So its establishment was as a special police establishment. It was established as a special police establishment. It was known as Special Police Establishment. That was before set up in 1941, okay. So why was it set up? This special police establishment was set up because at that time there was World War II. Okay, India was under British. Okay, India was under British, and we had to send supply to Britain also. So to check the corruption, that if the supplies are going in the right way, or if the people are like corruption is there, to check on all of that. Under the War Department, this special police establishment was formed, and they used to check all this corruption and all in the central level. Okay, and after the war ended, India wanted this department to stay. They kept it. So after the war, they wanted the department to stay. So they made an act, Delhi Police Establishment Act. After the war, India wanted to keep this as a establishment. So they enacted something known as the Delhi Special Police Establishment Act. Okay. So by that act, this special police establishment, that was transferred from the War Department. First it was under War Department, so it was transferred from the War Department to the Home Department. Okay, so once it is under the Home Department, it can take care of all the states, right? So you can investigate on all central offices. Yes, now it works under Home Ministry. Next. So CBI has the power to investigate on all the states, okay, all the states and all the union territories with the consent of the state. They can investigate on any public sector or any cases that state wants them to investigate, okay. Because there are public, after independence there were so many public sectors came up. All these banks and all became nationalized, so CBI can investigate on bank people also, employees. Their headquarters is in Delhi. Now we have Intelligence Bureau. As I told you, it is one of the oldest intelligence bureaus in the world. It was started by British. Okay, it was started by British because British knew that Indian people didn't like their rule, so they wanted to gain the intelligence that who is making the revolt. Okay, what is the mindset of people, all those intelligence they wanted to gather. So they made the Intelligence Bureau. It falls under Ministry of Home Affairs. IB falls under Ministry of Home Affairs, but the director of IB is a part of Joint Intelligence Committee. Okay, Joint Intelligence Committee. Director of IB is a part of Joint Intelligence Committee. Okay, that will only report to the Prime Minister of India. Okay, nobody else. Joint Intelligence Committee. After Prime Minister, we have a Joint Intelligence Committee. Then comes the ministries, okay, Home Ministries, all the other ministries. So yeah, IB was also known as a Central Special Branch. Later on, it changed to IB. So as I told you, IB was just for the IB was an organization that was mainly for the domestic purposes, domestic intelligence. But in that time, IB used to handle the outside intelligence. Okay, outside India also, inside India also. IB was handling in that time. So there was like India-China war was there. So IB couldn't gather too much information about India-China war in 1962. That is why they failed, and because of that, we lost the war also. So then India knew that we need an separate organization for all the external threats or the external intelligence outside India. To collect all the intelligence, we need an external organization. That is when our Research and Analysis Wing, or RAW, started. RAW is for external intelligence, and IB is now for only Indian intelligence. Now we come to RAW. So RAW is India's Research and Analysis Wing. Okay, that is India's premier intelligence agency. It gains intelligence, collects intelligence from all the outside countries. Okay, outside India, everywhere RAW collects intelligence. They have so many agents outside. Okay, RAW agents. You won't know them. They'll be told spies also. You have so many spies also. RAW has so many spies also. You cannot find anything about RAW. Okay, you cannot find anything about RAW because it's mainly kind of a spy agency. So RAW's director only reports to the Prime Minister of India. Okay, RAW is considered as a wing and not as an agency, because if you take RAW as an agency, there is something called Right to Information Act, RTI Act. So if it's an agency, we have some rights to know about RAW. So RAW is not considered as an agency, it is considered as a wing. Because it's a wing, we don't have any Right to Information Act. We can't ask also what is RAW and all how many people are there. We cannot ask that also. So yes, after establishing RAW, India had so many victories like creation of Bangladesh, defeat of Kargil war, all those times RAW used to provide the intelligence, and because of that India had won the war, Kargil war or not. We still don't know what's the budget of RAW, nothing about RAW, okay? You won't get anything also. Then we talked about CRPF, that is Central Police Reserve Force, okay, sorry, Central Reserve Police Force. They were like the known as the Crown Representative Police, okay, in 1939. So it was mainly made to help the states maintain law and order, because state police force will be less, right? So if there is any riots or something, they used to deploy this Central Reserve Police Force, and they used to maintain law and order. We are just moving fast because we are just briefing it. So yes, so during the Chinese war, CRPF assisted the Indian army also. They don't only assist the police, they assist the army also. Whenever there is a lack of personnel, we deploy CRPF. So after Kargil war, we were like we didn't have too many agencies for the borders. So I will tell about the infiltration in the next slide. So BSF was formed to secure the border. Okay. So what happened is, like the borders were not secure. Like borders were secured by police personnel. So there was a Pakistan infiltrations were there. After independence, there were so many Pakistan infiltrations. So because of that, CRPF could not be deployed every time, right? Only the state police used to check the borders of the states. So because of that, India thought that we need some organization just for the borders. So for the borders, just for the borders, India and Pakistan border and India and Bangladesh border was given to Border Security Force or BSF. India-Myanmar border was given to Assam Rifles. India-Nepal border was given to SSB, and India-Chinese border was given to ITBP. Okay. We only have BSF in our syllabus. So I've told you about BSF yesterday. Border Security Force to secure the borders of India and Pakistan and India and Bangladesh. Okay. India-Pak border, we will secure this part. Then SPG, which we have learned just now. So I've marked all the references. So when I send you the presentation, go to these references and read by yourself also. Okay, this is where I made the PPT from. RAW and all, you won't get any information. IB and all, you won't get any information. There won't be any special website for them. That is why I made the PPTs for you. So you can check the references. There is references for police, then CID, CBI, then we have IB, RAW, CRPF, then we have BSF and SPG. Okay. So we're done with that. Now we'll forgo to forensic report. Okay. So I've given you some assignments like in your syllabus. In your syllabus, there are portions like allied institutions, that is CFBP, BPR&D. So all those are assignments for you. Okay. Where after your 12th standard now, you have to go to the website. Okay. Like you can go to their website and you can check. You can go to their website. For example, if I am telling BPR&D, BPR&D. So you can go to their website. Okay, find out who is the director. Okay. Find out what is the mission and vision of that organization. You can get that because all of these agencies will be having their own websites. You can directly go to the website and you can find all this. Okay, you can find more information also. There will be more information given in the websites. You can learn them. Okay, so this is just for example BPR&D. There are so many other institutions also. There is CCMB. All those things have their own websites. Okay, you can go to their websites and find out all this information. You have time till like 16th. You will be coming after 16th only, right? So one day you write one organization, no need to write too much and all, just one page information will be enough, sufficient more. You know about that organization. Okay. So I hope when you come, we'll bring the assignments. Yes. Now we'll move on to forensic report writing. So you must have heard about all this in all the movies and all. Like we are waiting for the forensic report to come. So you as a forensic person must know how to write a report. Okay. So there is like different labs will be having different formats. Okay. It is like there is no standard report format. Different labs will be having different formats. So accordingly, you have to write the reports. So in this presentation, I have taken an international book. Okay. From that international book only I have made this presentation. So it mentions the basic criteria of how to make a forensic report, how to draft a forensic report, just the basic criteria. It may change from lab to lab, organization to organization. Okay. This is a this book is available in our library also. When you come, you can go through this also. You can get it online also. I have mentioned the reference. So from that book only I wrote this. That means it is like entire world, like the basic criteria which you have to like formulate or maintain while writing a report. So we'll start with forensic report. Yes. What is forensic report? Everybody will be waiting for forensic report. So what is forensic report? It is a scientist report. Forensic scientist report is a production of all effort which has gone into the investigation. Like what all investigations did you do, what all analysis did you do, everything. Okay, you have to write it and give it as a report. What is the results you obtain? So forensic scientist report is a production of all the efforts which have gone into the investigation. So forensic scientist, I've heard about all these terms, right? Forensic scientist. Why are we known as forensic scientist, not like a forensic expert or something? We are mainly known as forensic scientists, okay, because every crime scene is a new scenario for us. No crime scenes will be like same. Before, like we go to one crime scene, murder crime scene, the next murder crime scene will be totally different scene. So they're like new science, like new crime scenes for us. Every crime scene will be like new crime scene for us. So we have to formulate a method to analyze the crime scenes. That is why forensic people are mainly referred to as forensic scientists, not like forensic experts or something. They are mainly referred to as forensic scientists. So it contains, the report contains all the relevant details and must be laid out in such a way that it constitutes, its content is immediately accessible to non-scientists, whether police officer, lawyer or jury member. Okay. So main important part is you should write a report, but you should write it in such a way that people will understand it. So if you go into the court and you are giving this report to the judge or the jury, okay, the lawyer or anyone, or the police officer also, they will read it. If they don't understand anything, okay, you will have to like explain too much about afterwards. So you must write it in a way that people will understand. Like if you are comparing DNA, you will have to write it that this is the possibilities, this is how we compared. In a normal, like not go into a scientific matter, just how people will understand, who is not from a scientific background. If I am writing a biological report, some other people who is not from physics background, he should read and he should understand what it is. Okay, don't use like too much hard terms in biology or something. So report should be formulated in a way like everybody who reads it must understand the results of the observations. So format of the report. Now we will go with the format of the report. The first one is name and address. Obviously you have to mention your name, right? You are as an expert, you will be the one who is handling all the evidences, so you have to mention your name. The report should open with the relevant details of the scientist who has compiled it, name, laboratory and qualification. So one of your students is, so if I am doing, for example, there is a person who is in CBI Central Forensics Laboratory, he works in the fingerprint division. Okay. So if he is doing, he will write his name. So which laboratory is working at Central Forensics Laboratory, okay, CBI Delhi. He will mention that. Then he will mention his qualification, forensic fingerprint expert or forensic scientist, so he is a fingerprint expert. Okay. Then he can also mention his experience, because if he is mentioning 8 years of experience in forensic fingerprint identification, that is like a weightage for the report also, right? So you can also mention your experience. So first thing you do is name and address. You will mention your name, your qualifications, the department or laboratory you are working for, and also your experience. Yes, outline of circumstances. Second one is known as outline of circumstances. That means there is a logic. There is a logic in the outline and the course of events in the incidents that is under investigation, giving it scientific details to put the contents into scientific tests and examinations which have been carried out. So we can briefly write about what the case was, okay, what all examination should have been done, like is been done, and all these things in a brief, what all examination should be conducted. So an outline, just an outline, okay. If there is blood evidence, if you are going for DNA analysis, you can just basically give an outline, okay, what all investigations or what all examination will be going to be done, or the scientific test will be going to be done. So that is just about the outline of circumstances. Then outline of scientific work. So an outline of scientific works carried out will show the scope and depth of the expert examination. It should indicate the questions that have been addressed and may clarify those which have not been, or it can or cannot be addressed. Okay. So outline of scientific work. For example, if I am doing DNA typing, okay, DNA typing, if I am doing DNA typing, I should mention, right, I should mention how I did the DNA typing, okay, what was samples, like standard samples used, if you are running it for polymerase chain reaction, how did you do all those things, okay, what all scientific tests you are doing, their outcome you have to write there, okay. You have to mention the analysis which you are conducting, that is known about outcome of outline of scientific work which you are going to carry out. Also, what all is addressed, like have you done the DNA typing, okay, if it could not be done, why could it not be done, all those things you have to mention. Yes, list of exhibits examined, that is very important. When you are in a forensic science laboratory, you must know which all samples came in and which all samples you handled, which all samples you examined, all those things you have to maintain. Just from the beginning of crime scene we do this. So if you are an expert, forensic expert, you are going to a crime scene, for example there is a murder case, you go into a crime scene, there is blood, you are collecting blood, okay, you went there, we will tell you about the collection methods and everything, okay, all those things will be there covered in the latest syllabuses. So first you have to put a baseline, right, to learn the forensics. So you went to the crime scene, you collected blood you can take a swab and collect the blood, okay. So you should write, as an expert, if you are going, then you should write the name, who collected that thing, where was it collected from, all those things you have to mention on the label, okay, label it, and you have to send that to the packaging laboratory. So when it's in laboratory, the handler who is taking it, or the police, if is if the forensic scientist didn't go to the crime scene, if the police went to the crime scene and he was the one who collected, so he should mention who was the officer, okay, the designation, how did he collect, where did he collect, all those things he will mention. Then he will send to the forensic science laboratory, and you as an expert, you will be in the forensic laboratory, you will be the one who is taking the evidence, okay, and you are, for example, you are the one who is doing blood typing, okay, you are checking whether this blood is of A, B or AB grouping, you are doing the blood grouping. So you did the blood grouping from some part of the blood, then in that log you will mention, after the inspector, after the police personnel, you have to mention your name, that you did all this test, and you have to close the sample, then you have to forward it. For example, if you are forwarding it to DNA, you want to take the DNA out of the blood again, so you will forward that thing to DNA, then another person will be there in the DNA lab, right. So he will also do the DNA typing, and he will also maintain his name, he will write his name and what test he did and what was the outcome, all those things he will write. So just like that, now you see how the log was maintained. First the person who was collecting it maintained the log, then the blood person, scientist who did the blood typing, maintained the log, then the person who handled the evidence again, that was for DNA typing, he also maintained the log. Just like that, you have to maintain the logs. This is known as chain of custody. Chain of custody, okay. Chain of custody is nothing but a log of people who handled the evidence. So list of exhibits should be exhibits examined. So it is usual to list the items that have been examined and from whom these items were obtained in order to maintain the chain of continuity of the relevant exhibits in the case, okay. The importance of chain of continuity is to demonstrate that proper track has been kept of the progress. So you have to maintain a log of from whom did you accept the evidence. In this case, the police inspector gave you the evidence, right. So you have to mention that you took this evidence from the police inspector, and you have to mention what you are going to do, your name, Okay, and after you are giving someone else, they will also start mention that they received it from you and what they are going to do. So you can, when you check the chain of custody, you can get to know what all analysis was done, who all are the persons who handled it. Okay, so if the evidence is going missing, you can identify from the chain of custody, right, from which log it went missing, after which log it went missing. So for all those things, you maintain a proper log, that is known as chain of custody, log of people who handled the evidences. Yes. Then there is description of work carried out. The work undertaken by the forensic scientist should then be described, relating the examinations and the test procedures to the various items in the most logical order possible. So the work, for example, came, you are doing DNA typing. Okay, you are doing DNA typing, so you are using PCR. Okay, then you did the DNA typing and you are putting in southern blot and you got the sample, everything is done. So you have to tell, like, description of the work carried out. So you have to tell from accepting the sample itself, what all did you do. So for DNA typing, you will accept the sample, then you have to use centrifugation to get the part. You have to use 2-3 times, you have to centrifuge the sample, then you will get a part, then you have to take it from there and you make the gel. Okay, there is something called a gel, you make the gel, then you put there is something called electrophoresis. Okay, you do electrophoresis, then you separate the DNA and you have to preserve this thing, right. So then you use technique known as blotting techniques. You will use southern blotting, you will preserve this DNA which you have extracted. So all those scientific methods that you did, you have to describe. Okay, that I accepted the sample like this, did centrifugation, collected the samples, then we used electrophoresis method, what was the voltage used, okay, what was the base which is used, that is usually agar. You will learn all this in forensic biology, you will have DNA extraction and all. So what are the things we used, and after that what results we came, okay, what all dyes we used inside that for visualization. So after that, how did we preserve it, blotting techniques, all those techniques you have to mention. So description of the work carried out, you have to mention this not as a too scientific method, you have to mention this like people will read and know that all this method was done. You must not go to the scientific background. Okay, you must mention in like people who is reading the report must understand that you did all these things. They don't need to know the principle behind the equipments and all, but they need to know that you did all these things. The scientist should explain justification for each element of work carried out and provide a comprehensive summary for the results achieved. So he should tell why he used that method. Okay, why was that method required. For DNA, obviously you have to do some centrifugation. Okay, and for example, if you are using some other kind of dye, then you have to explain that why, if the DNA was too much degraded, okay, too much degraded, we only got some sample of DNA, it was very degraded, that is why we have to use PCR or polymerase chain reaction. Okay, like that you will have to explain that why did you use that, or because you are going with the report to the court, they will ask so many doubts. Okay, so you have to explain every technique. So why did you choose that technique? So that is why all the labs mainly choose an internationally certified technique. Okay, all the labs usually when they are performing some test, they will choose some test that is internationally accepted, so that you won't have all these doubts, right, because the test is, that is the main thing about ISO also. You are giving certification, that means that lab is using some kind of technique that is all over the world, the technique is same. So just like that, you have to mention why do you use the technique, all those things you have to mention here. Yes, interpretation of the findings. The results of every procedure carried out to be interpreted in the context of this case. In occasion, there may be more than one interpretation of a particular set of results. So you have to interpret your results, like you have to provide the interpretation of your results. For example, we went to a crime scene, there was blood. Okay, you took blood, you collected the sample, okay, brought it to the lab, collected the sample, you brought it to the lab. Okay, first thing what you will do, you will check that if the human blood or an animal, first you will check if it's blood or some kind of red paint. Okay, so for that what will you do, I told you about one test, that is Tickman's test, that is a confirmatory test for blood. So you did this Tickman's test and you found out that okay, fine, this is blood. Okay, you found out that this is blood. Okay, I will show you. So you went to the crime scene, okay, you collected blood, collected blood. Now what will you do? You went, you should know if it's blood or not, right? Is it really blood? That you have to know. Okay, so what will you do? You will do a test for blood. You will know if it's a red paint also, you may collect and come, but you have to check whether it's blood or not. So you will do that. That is like the first. Okay, then what will you do? After you found that it's blood, then what will you do? You will check that if it's human blood or animal blood. Okay, if it's human blood was involved, you got some animal blood, so you will check if it is human or not. You have so many techniques to check whether it's human or not. There is techniques like Ochterlony double immunodiffusion. There are so many diffusion techniques or techniques that you will learn in biology, but for now you will have to check whether it is human blood or animal blood. Origin, you found out this is human blood. Okay, then the basic method, what will you do? You will type AB or O. You will find that out also. You will also find out whether if it's blood grouping. You will do basic blood grouping because you have some kind of suspect or something. You have their blood. Okay, if his blood is A and his blood was found in the crime scene also, the suspect's blood was found in the crime scene also. If the blood is B, you don't need to take that person as suspect anymore, right? So you can just narrow down. Everything what we do is just for narrowing down. So you found out the suspect's blood is also A group, and the one which blood which you got in the crime scene is also kind of an A group. Then you have some more scope that he is a suspect, right? The scope increased. Then what we will do? Then you can go for yes. Then the final technique you will be going for is DNA typing. You can go for DNA typing. So you will get the blood sample from the suspect, okay, by his permission only, okay, or from the court order you can get the sample. You get the sample, then you start DNA typing. You compare the DNA. It will be just some lines which will you see. You will do the practicals. You will compare the DNA, and if it's a match, then you will write that DNA is similar. Okay, if it's not a match, you will write otherwise. So that is how you do. So we were discussing about description of findings. So here you know, right? You did all this test, so you have to write down about the findings of the test. That is all about the description of test. Yes. Next one will be conclusions. So results of various tests should be drawn together to form a series of conclusions. They should be clear and unambiguous. So that means you did so many tests now. So you have to conclude everything. You have to tell that if it's blood or not. So conclusion, what will you do? You have to tell that if it's blood, it was blood, it was human blood, DNA, you did the blood typing, that was A group, then you compare the DNA, and DNA was similar to suspect 3. For example, we have 4 or 5 suspects. So DNA, we collected samples from all those things, all of the suspects, we compared it and we told that DNA was similar to suspect number 3. Okay. So results, conclusions you have to write. Then we will move on to use of assistants. Okay, use of assistants. That means the scientist who compiles the report may in fact be putting together the work of several colleagues who have assisted during the examination. It is usual to list the names of these colleagues and to indicate which aspect of work they have carried out. Just means like you are doing some analysis. Okay, you are doing some analysis, so you will be using your colleagues also. You will be using your colleagues from some other lab also. Your same labs will be working together with you to complete that case. So you have to mention that also. You have to mention about the colleagues which were there, which were present for the analysis. For example, like so we learned about so many sections, right? we learned about biology and serology, right? Biology and serology we learned about. So this is mainly considered with the body fluids, okay, anything, okay. So we got, for example, we got a bone sample, then we did some biological analysis on this, anthropological analysis on this, okay. We could use anthropometry and did some analysis on this. After that you want to extract the DNA from this, then you will forward this to, or your colleague will be in the DNA section, you will forward it to DNA section from the same lab. There they will also do the analysis for the DNA. So who all colleagues were involved, okay, who all from the same lab, maybe biology may be one single lab, okay. So one person in that lab will be dealing with all this biological examination, one person may be dealing with serological examination. So they are in the same lab only, right. So you can write which all colleagues you made used, which all colleagues, maybe your subordinate will be in like blood, your subordinate will be doing that blood typing and you will be doing the DNA. So you have to mention which all colleagues or assistants you used, or which all whomever the person which you got assistance from. Then appendices to the report. So certain facts of the scientific work, for instance blood grouping test, information is more readily documented in tabular form and described in words. Scientist report should be in a form suitable to be read in court and may well be difficult to read out table of. That just means that whenever you are giving a report, you can put an appendix at the end. That means you can just in a tabular form you can keep all the results, okay, all the tests you conducted, all the results you got, all this in a tabular form you can keep. That will be easy for anybody who is getting the report to read, right. They can go to the appendix and they can know what are the tests conducted and what did they get the results. So they don't need to go to the entire report, they can just go to the appendix and get a brief idea. If you are going to a court and the judge won't have the time to read the entire report, okay, they will just go to the appendix and they will check what all results you got, what test you did, that's all. So reference I took from the Crime Scene to Court, Essential of Forensic Science, that was written by Peter White. So that's a book that's available in our library also. When you come you can refer to this, or if you want to refer you can try to find the book in internet also. So that's all about today's lecture. We've seen about how to report, how to write a forensic report. We have seen about that. So I've told you about what's a report, okay. Forensic scientist report is a product of all the efforts which have gone into investigation. Then format, first is name and address, your name, your lab, all those things you will mention, your experience, everything you will mention. Then outline of circumstances of that case that you will mention. Scientific work, what are scientific work you are going to proceed with, that you will mention. List of exhibits to maintain the log, chain of custody, you will mention the list of exhibits. Description of work carried out, I told you, I showed you the example also how the work is carried out, all the descriptions you will have to mention. What all findings, what all observations or what results you got, that you will have to mention. Conclusions, in a very small form you can mention all the conclusions for all the tests carried out. Assistance, if you are using some assistance for your work, then you can mention that also. Appendix in tabular format, you can just mention about the appendix, what all test you conducted. In a tabular form you can mention that. So that's all about the report writing in forensics. So this is not just for India, like the normal, like overall view. So different laboratories will have different format to write the report, okay. This is just a common overview to how to write a report. So thank you.